Paul says in Romans 1:5, through him we have received grace and apostleship for the obedience to the faith among all nations for his name. I wonder how many times this Bible verse has been misunderstood and misused in the church context. Paul said that he had received grace and apostleship to bring all nations to the obedience of the faith. What do? We take this verse and stand on the church platform and announce, it's not enough that you believe in Jesus, you must obey. The implied message is, not only must you obey God, but you must obey me, the pastor. Don't dare to question God's anointed. Don't think for yourselves, just obey. It's not uncommon that so-called spiritual leaders use this or similar verses to manipulate their members, to motivate them to go to church, pay their tithes, and spend a large portion of their spare time and energy on different church activities. Don't get me wrong, it's good, very good to be part of a church fellowship, but if the pastor uses scripture to manipulate the members to obedience, it would probably be better for all parties if all took a long Sabbath rest from that church. The concept of obedience to the faith in Romans is not a legalistic admonishment from Paul to precious believers to disconnect their own understanding or critical thinking and to just accept everything the pastoral leaders say. On the contrary, sometimes we understand a concept or expression better by knowing its opposite. Throughout the whole book of Romans, the opposite of faith is not fear, which we have often heard, but works of the law. You probably have heard teaching that the opposite of faith is fear, and there is certainly a truth to that. But again, in the book of Romans, the opposite of faith is not fear, but works of the law, that is legalism. In 1 John chapter 4, verse 18, it says that perfect love casts out fear, and thereby one can argue that it's love and not faith that is the opposite of fear. However, faith and love are obviously closely connected. When we understand God's love for us, our faith works because faith works through God's love. When Paul said that he had received grace and apostleship to bring all peoples to the obedience of faith, he was not talking about the legalistic obedience, but simply obedience to the teaching of the gospel. That it's only through faith in Jesus that we can have fellowship with God and not through our own performance. Obedience to the faith is about renouncing all trust in ourselves, our own goodness, our own good works, and instead only trusting in Jesus and his finished work at the cross. Paul says in Ephesians, for by grace you have been saved through faith, and not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast. So obedience to the faith is about us refusing to boast in ourselves and instead only trusting in God's amazing and totally unmerited grace.